Another Trump ally who is continuing to push election conspiracy theories, even though it may cost him his seat in the House, is Republican Congressman Scott Perry of Pennsylvania. The former chair of the far-right Freedom Caucus repeated debunked claims that the 2020 election was stolen in his debate earlier this month. You may remember Congressman Perry from his alleged role in multiple plots to overturn the 2020 election ahead of January 6th. Perry's phone was seized by federal agents, which revealed a plan to change the U.S. Attorney General to the now indicted Jeffrey Clark. Stay with me. Congressman Perry is now in a fight for his political survival against Democrat challenger Janelle Stelson. And Janelle Stelson joins us now. Janelle, welcome to the show. Your race is pretty much a microcosm of the presidential election. A woman, Democrat, running against a man who is an election denier. So I am curious, when you are campaigning, what is breaking through to people who may be armed with a lot of disinformation, who may be longtime Trumpers, Trump supporters? Are you finding an effective way to communicate facts versus fiction? And what does that look like?
Well, I think we have a lot of common ground. I think people are far more to the center than sometimes they're made out to be in the media. I know we always hear about the extremes, but most people just want an affordable life where they can take care of their kids, put food on the table, send them to a good college if that's what's in their future. I hear an awful lot about that. I also hear about abortion and a woman's right to be in control of her own body. They don't seem to think that government knows better than their doctors do, or longtime politicians like Scott Perry. That's just a bridge too far. And I was live on the set 2 years ago when the Supreme Court handed down the Dobbs decision overturning Roe, and had to look out into the camera and tell every woman watching that her rights had been rolled back 50 years. Turns out nobody's too happy about that. And the other thing is, there's a very clear, and I think, a lot of it is about January 6th that's kind of morphed into a theme that I'm hearing, that Washington is deeply broken. People want term limits. They don't want career politicians like Scott Perry, who has been, he's had 12 years to do something for this district and has done very little. In fact, I would submit he's the chief obstructionist in this 118th Congress that has achieved fewer pieces of legislation than at any time in the past century. So people are really fed up, Mika.
So, Janelle, are you finding then that bringing up 2020 and January the 6th is kind of turning off voters against you, that people just don't want to talk about it anymore? Or are you finding that they give Scott Perry a pass on all of that? How does that play out? Or you just don't raise it, really?
There's no pass. And I'm willing to talk about, I've been a TV journalist, a newscaster, anchor and reporter for the past 38 years. So I've been listening all that time to our concerns and our issues, and that hasn't changed. I'm still doing that. But, that's what I hear from folks. They actually want their votes to count. That's a pretty big deal. When Scott Perry is the only person in Pennsylvania's congressional delegation, Republican or Democrat, to vote against giving medals to the police, Capitol Police, and the other officers who guarded our bastion of democracy and tried to keep the damage to a minimum, and also protected his life and the life of his colleagues. He's the only one who voted not to give them a medal for that, so that a few hours later, after they kept him safe, he could walk back into the chamber safely and vote to overturn all of our votes. Turns out people who vote really want those votes to count.
So, Janelle, I was just in Pennsylvania this past weekend, a little east of where the district is, where you're seeking to represent, and it was nonstop political advertisement, and virtually everything the Republicans were putting up was about immigration. Can you talk to us about how you feel like that issue, obviously your district far from the border, is resonating, and what do you tell your constituents about it?
Well, And even though it's far from the border, it's a big deal here, too. We have a lot of migrant labor. We have a lot of apples to pick, that kind of thing. And, we need those workers. I will say about the border, this is a matter of national security. We have to secure the border. And my opponent, Scott Perry, flew there on the taxpayer dime a couple months ago and said this is a, news flash that we have a crisis at the border, and blamed it all on the Democrats. For me, this is an American problem. The fact that he would be interested in scuttling that bipartisan immigration bill that would have moved us a little closer to securing the border, that's a real problem for folks in this area. For me, this is an American issue. It's not a Democratic or a Republican issue. We must secure the border. If people come here who don't have, a legitimate claim to be here, they need to be sent home to their native countries in an expeditious fashion.
Democratic candidate for Pennsylvania's 10th congressional district, Janelle Stelson. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Come back. Good to have you.
Thank you. JanelleStelson.com. You can hear a lot more about my policies and why I'm a better fit for this district than Scott Perry. Thank you.
There you go. Thank you very much.